It is 3 o'clock, and I'll call this meeting of the Rockingham County Board of Elections February 18th meeting to order. And I'd like to welcome everyone. Remind everybody here to please turn your cell phones down so they won't interrupt our meeting. And at this time, we'll stand and do a pledge to the flag, and we'll follow that by standing and having a silent moment of reflection or prayer.
We have an individual that said they would do prayer. We have an individual that said they do prayer, Mabel.
Mabel? Mm-hmm. Oh, I didn't know that. Excuse me. Okay, let's do the pledge then. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Mabel, I'm sorry, I didn't know that.
May we bow our heads?
Oh, sorry.
My country, 'tis of thee, sweet land of liberty. Of thee I sing. Land where my fathers died, land of the pilgrim's pride. From every mountainside, let freedom ring. Our fathers, God, to thee, author of liberty, to thee we sing. Long may our land be bright with freedom's holy light. Protect us by thy might, great God, our King. We thank you for this beautiful day in Rockingham. We thank you for the Board of Elections. We thank you for the staff. We thank you for the entire Rockingham County governmental team. Oh Lord, you know what our needs are. We ask you to touch each of our families. Bless us, Lord. Bless this county during this month of brotherhood, this month of Valentine's, this month of thinking about others. Let us learn to hold hands and walk together so that we can be a family joined together. In your name we pray. Amen.
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 Thank you. At this time, I'll ask for a motion to approve the tentative agenda.
I make a motion to approve the agenda.
Is there a second?
I second the motion.
Motion second. All in favor say aye. Aye. Motion carried. Item number 5 is the approval of the minutes of the last 3 meetings, and we'll do these individually. Each of you board members should have had a chance to review the minutes of these meetings. I'll first ask for a motion to approve the minutes of the January 21st, 2020 meeting. Is there a motion?
Mr. Chair, I move that we accept the minutes of the January 21st, 2020 meeting as written.
Is there a second?
I second it.
There's a motion and a second to approve the January 21st, 2020 meeting. The next is the call meeting of January 27th, 2020. You've had a chance to look at these minutes. Is there a motion to approve these minutes?
Brother
Yes.
Chairman, I make a motion that we approve the meetings for January the 22nd, January the 27th, 2020.
There's a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion is second to approve these minutes. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, like sign. Motion carried. The next meeting is the absentee meeting, which we had last week, February the 11th. You have these minutes also. Is there a motion to approve the minutes of February 11th, 2020?
I have a motion to approve the minutes of the February 11th absentee meeting as written.
Is there a second?
I second.
There's a motion and a second to approve February 11th, 2020 minutes. Is all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, like sign. Motion carried. So the minutes of the 3 last meetings have been approved. And I believe Amy indicated there was no one signed up for public comment. So at this time, we'll move on to the next item on our agenda, which is discussion of the 2020-2021 budget request from the Board of Elections to the county. We have in front of us the department requested budget report. And I'll remind you that there's probably about, I don't know, 3 or 4 or 5. There's 5 or 6 pages of the budget request, but there's only 4 or 5 or 6 different things that we can actually have any control over. The majority of the things like salaries and workers' comp and retirement and a lot of these things are amounts provided by the county to our office, which, you know, really we don't have any control over. There's a couple of things that we do, and we'll go down the list item by item. Of course, the first item is the salaries for the director, the senior deputy director, and the deputy director. These amounts are provided by the county, again. And you'll see there's no overtime pay. The board members' salary, and there's some money in there for the board, the chair, secretary, and members, and also the overseeing one election. Again, this is a budget for 2020 to 2021 that will go into effect the 1st of July to the end of June 2021. The next item is temporary salary. These for part-time employees in the office. They are appointed precinct officials who assist with pre- and post-election tasks and special projects throughout the year. 2017-18 year, we had in that line item 19,327. 2018-2019, there was 20,267. And last year, I believe we requested 20,000, and it was cut by the county down to 10,000. And it appears that the director's now asking for the temporary salaries, again, of 20,000. And we had our temporary salaries cut in half for 2019-20. Full-time staff had to complete these tasks that would have been completed by temporary staff. So is there a discussion on the temporary salaries? It's one thing that we can have some control over.
As far as discussion, I think I voiced my concerns about that in our last meeting.
Okay, I have a query. May I?
Yes.
Would it be appropriate to make any kind of possible amendments or any kind of votes at this time pertaining to this particular line item, temporary salaries?
Well, I think we can approve, I suppose, any amount we want to. By the way, this is a budget discussion. We don't necessarily have to approve the entire budget today. It has to be into the county by March 13th. So we've got another couple of meetings that we can do that. But as to your question about maybe making some amendment. Are you talking about to the request or?
Okay, I think what I would like to do, with your permission, is to just state my personal preference for this particular line item, and we've had discussion over what was the appropriate amount and what was awarded and what was and what may be needed. I see that the $20,000 is here. It's been requested by the executive director as to what she thinks would be necessary in order to carry on the regular responsibilities of the department. I, for one, would champion her request for the $20,000, and I would like to publicly state my support for the $20,000 in this particular line item of temporary salaries. Whether we vote for that today or sometime later, I would like to have that stated for the record.
Bonnie, would you like to restate your comments about this?
My opinion is I will be voting against that because I do think that as looking at the budget and looking at this amount and looking at the actions taken in the office, I think with a true leader, we could balance this and not have to ask for the $20,000.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
this $20,000, will this be included for the elections, or whether we have, this is for the general election, included in the general election for November and all?
Okay. Tina, would you like to address
No,
that?
the election precinct staff line item, which we haven't gotten to yet, is what covers our one-stop staff and our election day staff, our precinct officials and one-stop officials. Temporary salaries is, in essence, part-time staff.
And I guess they do, like it says, pre and post-election tasks and special projects?
Yes, they help us inventory our supplies and all the supplies that go out to all of our voting sites, test things that need to be tested, such as curbside alarms, flashlights, batteries, make sure, everything's ready and working. They do our inventories to make sure that we have spare supplies on hand should they run out or we need to replenish during the election. They also have to do it after. So they always help with that. We have black informational notebooks and different forms because we have emergency backup procedures. If our laptops were happen to go down, we have to have emergency forms of whatever the state board is using for that election replenished and have on hand and everything packed. So they help with those tasks. We've had signature projects where we had to make sure and go through, and we have to do this periodically, that every voter record that we have in our computer has a signature with it. So that's a project when we have redistricting, working on checking our geocodes for us before I begin actually starting to enter that into our system, because again, our geocodes are our street segments for every street that we have in this county. Each voter's ballot depends on the geocodes being correct in our system. And then of course, when there's redistricting, they all have to be checked because many will change depending on where the district lines went into the new district. They help with proofreading, checking our website to make sure that all of our links work on our website. If something's changed at the state board, is our link still linking to it? Proofreading, if something's out of date or something needs to be updated with brochures. They go through our black books, replenish all of those with the supplies. They do inventories in the office. They do all the verifications while they're in the office, which is a secondary process done after Susan does voter registrations during extremely busy times, which presidential election years happens to be one. And then, probably a month after voter registration deadline is over for elections, we tend to get in a whole lot, at that point of voter registrations. So once they're put in the system, they have to be verified. So it has to go through another person to check that, to make sure they were entered properly, again, to make sure they're entered in where they're supposed to be. And that's just a list of a few of the things that they do help us with prior to, post-election, and also throughout the year as needed.
But I do think in our discussion over this at our last meeting, all those things do not occur every year, is what I recall.
No, they don't. That's correct. And that's why we don't have a part-time person with set hours. These hours can be used as needed. Like when we go to a conference or whatnot, we have to have people in the office to serve the public when we're there. Well, we obviously don't pay them to come sit and wait for the phone to ring. We don't pay them to come sit and wait for somebody to walk in the door. We will have things there for them to work on. So they're actually doing work. They're not called in at a certain schedule at a certain set time. They are called in to assist when the assistance is needed. And when we run out of our temporary salary money, whatever it is set at, the work still has to be completed, most of which is prior to and post-election. And so when we run out of that money, full-time staff is responsible for having to do that. They do not get paid overtime any longer. That was cut last year, but they do get comp time to build, and their comp time is figured at their rate of pay at time and a half, whereas part-time salaries are paid at $10 an hour. So.
Okay, again, this is, temporary salaries has nothing to do with the election precinct staff.
No.
I think Tina has explained that.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
I too am opposed to the $20,000, but I am curious, and I'd like to ask Tina, since that money was cut in last year's budget, can you tell me how the office has suffered?
The office hasn't suffered. Full-time staff is having to, the office itself hasn't suffered. The service to our voters hasn't suffered. We haven't had to cut anything. However, full-time staff is having to do that work because the work still has to be done.
Well, I think we asked at the last meeting if you had any figures for us as far as the amount of overtime that the two employees had. Have you been able to get that for us?
No, I don't have the full overtime amount. They just rolled their comp time. I can get that for you tomorrow. I do know that the question was asked to me of what special projects, and I related since July for this, since this fiscal year, and didn't have exact, projects. Most of it has been election work because we had the municipal election and we were still finishing up and getting everything packed, put in for records retention, getting all of our final stuff finished for that election and inventories. And with the March primary, everything was backed up for the primary, so we went straight into preparing for the primary election. So most of the work this fiscal year thus far has not been special projects, it's been election prep and cleaning up from the election.
Okay, let me ask you, this, what you've given us is looks like of the $10,000 last year, this remained is the amount spent so far, $5,625, about $4,300 left. That was as of 6 December. Do you have any idea how much of that $10,000 you have left?
We have slightly less than 250 hours left
Which is, that would be
of that.
$2,500.
Yes.
It's figured based on $10 an hour. And that's, of course, I guess a lot of that will be used for this primary election.
Most of that will be used for pre-election and post-election tasks. Most of it will, not all.
So
Hopefully, we'll have some left. It just depends. You know, we don't always know exactly how much we're going to need per election. It depends on what our needs are and what has to be done. Of course, if there are changes or new regulations or law changes, and the state board has new procedures, we oftentimes will have to bring in help because we'll have to change things at the last minute. So I don't know exactly how much will be spent on pre and post-election, but the majority of the remaining hours will be spent on that. Some will be spent for the remainder of the budget year on some other things, that we'll need done in the office.
So really, we haven't used the 10,000.
No, not yet. We haven't been able to work on projects and such because we only had 10,000.
What projects did we not work on that needed to be worked on?
Well, we've got to rearrange and make some more room in our workshop. That's been on our list for 2 years. Even when we had the 20,000, we couldn't get to that. Things to that nature. Pre-election and post-election is always a must. Those tasks have to be done.
But
When
what
we have
else besides rearrange the workshop?
work for spaces, any projects we have, we're looking at putting together histories of things we don't have. We try to work on that as far as who all board members were. We've been working on this. I've been trying to put these together for years and sometimes do some research of everyone that's been elected, a list of everyone. We get these questions. We don't have a history put together, so it's very helpful to have people help us do this research at times. We haven't been able to work on it as of late, but that's a project certainly that is sitting there to be done.
So really, even when we had the 20,000, you still had projects that were unaddressed, is that right?
Sometimes, yes. But when you know the amount that you have for the year, you have to make decisions. Whatever amount you have to make decisions on what you have to have additional help in there for and what tasks must be completed. And, we've just had to be very scarce because we only had half of what we had been having. So you have to manage that. You can't just bring them in to work on things that you would like to have done or things that would, help us to have better storage, have better inventories, different things, which we have good ones now, but there's always things that can be done to improve. But you can't use all that time for certain things and then not have those hours to get ready for the election, because without them helping to get ready for an election, we wouldn't be ready. So you have to manage that time, no matter how many hours you have, to basically save time for those time frames that you have tasks that you're going to need the help for.
Okay, realistically, Tina, how much do we need in this for temporary salaries?
For the upcoming budget?
Yes.
My suggestion would be to put the 20,000 back, because again, and the reason I say that is because when full-time staff is having to do work that has to be completed in overtime, which is put out as comp time, but they accrue comp time by having to do things that we would have had part-time people doing. They accrue their comp time at time and a half at their salary. If we still had, as we used to have, more hours to utilize the part-time to do things like that is now falling back on full-time staff, it's more cost-effective for the county because they're only having to pay $10 an hour to part-time instead of full-time staff, in addition to the fact full-time staff already has to work overtime anyway. Like right now, One Stop doesn't close till 7:30, our remote sites. Then we have to get our things back, get them secured in, get reports, get our things back from the remote sites, get everything ready to go back out and replenish or whatever has to go back the next morning. So, we might get out of there 9 o'clock. It might be 9:30. It could be later if we had an issue. We haven't. Hopefully we won't. But, so there are times that we have to work overtime. They're going to be working overtime anyway. So, and they're going to be working on things, for the remote sites or for the one-stop sites. But that other work that would typically be done by part-time, when we have are going to use the rest of our money and we don't have any more hours, that work still has to be completed.
Okay.
Let me see if I understand.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
What I'm hearing you say, well, let me restate that. What I think I hear you saying is that the amount of money that you need in order to do the job the way that you would like to do it in your professional opinion for the line item temporary salaries is $20,000. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
So in essence, it's best to have this money set aside in the budget instead of trying to go back and ask for more money.
Well, that's always the case. You don't want to ever have to go back, which is why when we were cut in half with our part-time, that has to be managed. So we don't have to go back and run out of those hours, because I know there are certain tasks and things that have to be done. We've got to save those hours for part-time, because I know those things will be done. That leaves other things that aren't getting done, and full-time ends up having to do anything the part-time cannot complete.
Okay, let's try to bring this matter to a conclusion. I'll remind everybody again that in a comparable election year, 2018-19, the temporary salaries amount was $20,267, and she's asking for $20,000 now. Is there a motion on the floor to some effect?
Please, Mr. Chair, I would like to make a motion for temporary salaries that we include as part of the department request for 2020-21, the amount of $20,000 to accomplish that line item.
I second the motion.
There's a motion and a second on the floor to approve the amount requested, $20,000 for temporary salaries. All in favor say aye. Aye. Pose like sign.
Aye.
Okay, the motion carries 3-2.
Mr. Chairman, before we move on, could we go back up to the line for overtime pay? I've got just a question about that. I was looking, it's all zeros across there,
Right.
which I know there's no overtime pay now. But I was looking back on the adopted budget for last year, and I see that the overtime was listed over here in the salaries.
Correct.
Why does that not show anything in overtime for that time period?
On the county's report?
On this report, yes.
This is
on
a
this
county report.
Requested budget.
I don't know, it's a county report. My question is, that I have some questions that I need to ask the county, is on the overtime pay. One, we don't have it, that's why it's all zeros. It zeroed us out because our overtime was cut and switched to workers' comp. So that's why it's all zeros, but
Not workers'
I can't
comp.
comp time, excuse me. Other lines, if you're not using them, you can delete, and I can't get that line to delete, just to clean it up, so you're not even seeing that, because we don't have overtime.
Well, I was just curious why it didn't show the back time, from the
Because
previous
it's my
budget.
understanding, and that is a question, these are not our reports. These are finance reports. So, because we don't have overtime, it was set at zeros. And if I can figure out why I can't delete it like I could other, line items that don't have any money in it, then that will actually come off. But until I have an answer from them, being that this is not our report, I'm guessing it's because we don't have overtime. So it zeroed out that line item because we don't have overtime anymore.
So is that something that you could ask finance and report back with an answer of some kind that might satisfy?
Absolutely. I'll be checking with either Paul or Justin
Okay.
to get an answer to that.
Thank you.
Of how I can get it off of there.
All right.
Thank you.
Moving on to the next line item, elections precinct staff. Let me remind everybody that we are not here today to set one-stop voting days or hours. this is largely controlled by the General Assembly, such as they did during this primary period. They told us the days and hours that we would be open for elections, and we all agreed on that. Also, the one-stop plan has to be approved unanimously, or else, if it's not unanimous, it has to go to the State Board of Elections, and they would help us set a one-stop plan. Our task here is to try to come up with an amount of money that we think would be necessary to do the one election next year. Fortunately, we just have one election next year in 2021, November 2020, which, of course, we had the municipal and this primary during this year. So we don't know what's going to be required of us next year. It's my opinion to ask for whatever money we think is going to be necessary, whatever plan the state comes up with, and whatever plan we might come up with. We can't do less than the state requires. We may be able to do more if we agree on doing more days or hours. We can do that. So with that opening, I will entertain discussion as to the election precinct staff expenses, and this would include the one-stop site at the Board of Elections, the remote sites, one-stop voting, the general election day, and all the ancillary figures that come in as far as bringing back returns and training and all that stuff that goes along with it. So the amount that was requested was $90,410, which is about $131,000 less than it cost us this year. And by the way, we're fortunate that we didn't have to buy voting machines this year. Like Guilford County had to spend $2 million on voting machines. Somewhere along the line before me, we had the foresight to use paper ballots, and thankfully for that. So the amount requested, and this is for 13 days of one-stop. The same one-stop plan that we are operating under now for the primary, and that is the total amount. And I'm open for discussion as to anything about the precinct election precinct staff cost.
I'd like just one clarification. I thought I heard you say this was $131,000 less than what we requested this year?
31,000.
31,000.
Yeah, it was 121, the best of my recollection, for this year for municipal and the primary. 121,000, so it's about 30,000 less. 31, something like that.
Well, one thing I'd like to address, I do think that we could do with less than 12 officials each day. I do know that in watching the elections, even the election that's going on now with early voting, with the amount of people that are voting, I think we have way too many people in our precincts. Yes, I understand. We start with 12. We send some people home here. We send some people home there. But still, we're ending up with 7 and 8 people in each precinct, and I still think that's too many with the amount of people that are voting. So I really think we need to look at how many officials we have in these precincts.
Do you have a suggestion as to what a appropriate number might be during,
During
Yeah.
high
yeah,
numbered,
yeah.
honestly, during early voting, I think we could probably use 8 a day, and then send home if we don't need them. I don't think, with us having 100 people vote in a precinct in 11 and a half hours, that we need 8 people there. I just think that's too much. Yes, I understand this is a presidential. Yes, I understand that you and I haven't been through a presidential, and we'll have better insight, and Leanna, on that after this one. But still, this is a presidential primary that we're going through now, and I'm just not seeing the numbers that I think that constitute us using 12 officials or even 8 officials a day. We just got back from conference, we talked to a lot of people there, a lot of people sitting at our table, we questioned these type things. There was a gentleman sitting at our table from one of the counties that voted 6,000 people in one precinct, and they did it with 8 people. I just think that number's still high. We did 14 last time and 18, and I think 12 is still high.
I agree. You sound like the same argument I made 2 or 3 years ago, and somebody asked me how I questioned the director.
Well, that was in front of the state board after we had a meeting and discussed this when we should have been talking about it.
Well-
And then it went to the state board, and she kind of got thrown under the bus then.
Right, okay. But we were still talking about the same thing, the number of people working. I don't know how, I know the director, the senior director, deputies working, we've been voting for what, 4 days now? Thursday, Friday, Monday, and today's 4th day. And I think it's getting a lot better. Is that right, Tina? They're getting less and less,
And like you all have said, we always do that. So, I mean, we had 4 people working for a few hours today. It just depends. But when you're voting in small numbers as we are, and this isn't a new concept, we've done this. As far as how many you actually want their election day would be, I think the bigger question on how few do you want there for that day.
Which one of the precincts had 4 working today?
On one-stop sites?
Mm-hmm.
For a several-hour period, there were 4 working at the Wentworth site. 2 were at lunch. No, it would have been 5. And then they swapped out lunch. But we've had them redo their schedules twice. Again, we've always done this.
So in
it's-
essence, though, you had 7 people actually working, you just had people switch out at lunch.
Right, but they don't get paid for lunch.
Right, but I mean, you had 7 people working today.
For that time frame.
Okay.
And then we send people home, always. 1 an hour. At the Wentworth site, we send someone home at 2, 3, and 4. That first day, because it was so slow, we actually had someone go home at 1 o'clock. Then we had them cut down how many people are actually working each day. Like always, they're taking turns, taking time off and whatnot. We're always going to continue to do those things. When they're not voting people, we're going to send people home, have them take extra days off, and we'll adjust to get it down, with as few people as possible. They're still adjusting their schedules more, and people are taking more days off, leaving earlier and taking turns doing all of that. And then as far as election day, now those stay there all day, so they're going to be busy times. So, as far as the number of people that you all want there, the same things will take place. Whatever number of officials that you all see fit to have at both of our one-stop sites and our election day sites, especially one-stop, because it's that long period of time, we're still always going to adjust. If 8 people's too many, we'll send people home early. We'll have them take turns taking days off.
okay, we're talking about November, we're not talking about now. I mean, I understand we're looking at what's going on now. and it's been light. We don't expect November either the one stop or certainly the election day to be light. Tina, what, in your opinion, would be the minimum number of people per site, per hour, for one stop in November? If we can get by with 8 or 10 or whatever.
Yeah, and there again,
I mean, I know
per
you-
hour is hard to do because you don't know when it's going to be busy or not. But you could do, you've got to have more than one person at your registration station. In busy elections, you really do need 3 because we'll have people lining up and they can get them through, they can move on, they can get them faster. But at least 2 at your registration station. At your help station, minimum, really 2. Busy elections, maybe 3, but 2, I think. Because
Why
at
do you
your
say
help,
2?
I'm sorry?
Why do you say
That's
2?
what I was saying, because at your help station, that's where provisional voters have to go vote, number 1. If the registration station is full or there are no officials available and there's someone else there waiting to vote, the provisional station can also vote a regular voter. So if they don't happen to have a provisional voter at the time, they can vote the voter. That's
Wait a
where
minute.
all of the curbside stuff is kept. So all of the curbside prep to take out to the curbside voter and bring back, and the paperwork and the log sheets, all that is at the help station. So your curbside assistant has to be there as well. Now, we always do use, especially in busy years, especially when you have a van or a car with multiple people, or sometimes a van will come from the nursing homes or wherever, and have multiple people in the vehicle wanting to vote. But our curbside official or any official can only vote one voter at a time. They're not allowed to go out and get everyone's. At one time, we were able to do that. We're not allowed to do that anymore. So sometimes the greeter or somebody else may not be busy at the moment, and they can go assist another curbside person. But that's why I say 2, between the provisional, being able to vote a regular voter if the registration station was full, and the curbside assistance is all done from that help station, in
But you know-
addition to anything that someone needs help. If they need an explanation, if they want to look at copies of the laws, or things, if they are upset and need to go to the help station. And a lot of that is, those votes are typically done provisionally.
But many times I've been around to the different sites when we were allowed to do so, and I don't think I've ever seen a person at the help desk go out and do curbside. I know down here, for one stop, usually it's somebody who's sitting over there near the kitchen, whatever that person's doing.
That's the help station.
I thought the greeter is not necessarily helping people.
They don't do curbsides, they're doing the role of the greeter. The greeter is
What
not...
is the role of the greeter?
It's in our manuals, it's in all of our instructions, so we can look there too. The greeter, I will say, is, and I told y'all this last year, it's not required anymore. It became required from the state board directive when voter ID first went into play. It is not required anymore. They do a lot of the logs, voters in line, wait times, do a lot of the checking with that for reports that have to be turned in, your 10-2-4 close counts, the daily reconciliation logs. Some precincts or one-stop sites, greeters do that. Some, the chief judges do it. Some, an assistant or a judge does it. It's different, wherever.
Well, I think that's one position we could eliminate.
Yeah, it is no longer required. It has worked well, as we did discuss this last year previously, that it has worked very well for us in busy elections. But like right now, they're not busy. We're typically, and the greeter isn't always just sitting there, but we don't have to have that greeter anymore. But that is not the help station. The
Okay,
help
so-
station is the section that is labeled help station, and that's where your provisionals are done. Voters can vote there regularly if your registration officials are tied up, and a curbside, people that are assisting in curbside, again, don't just sit there at the station waiting for a curbside. If their assistance is needed somewhere else, they'll go help somewhere else. But that is where the supplies and all of the stuff is done, and that's where everything is for a curbside person.
Okay, let me
But
see if
the-
I understand so far. I've heard, I think, 2, possibly 3 categories, and I've heard in the first category the number was 3, and in the second category the number was 2, and that possible third category, that was an optional number. So in my mind, I'm up to 5. What are the other needs, and what are those categories?
Your chief judge, who typically, doesn't work full-time at a station.
Okay.
Your chief judge is having to fill in, help with situations and whatnot. So
Gotcha.
you know you're going to have a chief judge.
Gotcha.
And your 2 judges, you know you're going to have that.
Both a Democrat judge and a Republican judge?
Correct.
Okay.
But do they do other, they don't just?
Absolutely, just,
they-
it depends on, where they're stationed or what they're doing. But they're always counted in the total.
Okay.
So if you cut that 12 to 8 or whatever you choose to put at a polling site, but you've got to have somebody at the ballot station, big elections 2, smaller elections 1, and then with the ATV forms, because they have to go through those, they have to keep those straight. They take that they have to be scanned to make sure that the voter is getting the right ballot.
Is that 2 different positions, ATV and the ballot station? Or
It's
is that
one station, but it's
Okay.
2 different positions, yes.
Well, that,
But one
that is
person-
important,
Yeah.
that 2 people do that.
It is. It is. It is.
According to my count,
If
we're
you
up to 10
needed to,
people.
if you needed a third person, and oftentimes they do, it wouldn't be on the part of the ballot station where they're handing out ballots. Typically, unless they're really, really, really busy, one person can handle that okay. It's the other side with the ATV forms and keeping the log sheets. That's where the extra assistant would come
Are
in
there any
handy. But
other
one
essential-
person can't do both.
Are there any other essential stations that we haven't talked about so far?
Did you count the DS200?
I haven't gotten there yet. I was
Okay.
going through
Okay.
the path of traffic.
I'm up
And
to
then,
10.
yes, the DS200.
Okay.
Person that works at the DS200, they get the counts when someone needs or wants a count for what is on the DS200 at any given time. They're the ones that hand out the I voted stickers.
And that's one person, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
And that's the
5, 8,
people
10, 11.
help people know how to put the ballot in the machine.
Right, yeah, and if a voter needs assistance or they get a message, on their screen on the DS200, they're there to assist if that's necessary. And, just kind of watch and make sure. I also have them check when there's not voters to try to go through and check the voting booths to make sure that people haven't left campaigning material in there to try, because as you all know, it happens, and someone will see it and call and say, well, you're campaigning for this person. Well, no, our person hasn't had a chance to get over there yet, and the previous voter left things.
Okay, so
They'll make
it
sure
sounds-
pens are there, so
Jeff,
they
you
do
keep-
other
you
things.
keep
But
it
one
total
person,
there.
Yes,
I'm confused
one
as to
person.
Jeff's number, because I've got 2 people at the registration, 2 at the help station, 2 at the ballots, which is ballots and ATV, and 1 at the DS200. That's 2, 4, 6, 7, and you've got.
Chief judge.
You've got chief judge as 8. All right, your Democratic and your Republican judge fill 2 of those positions.
Yes, I'm included. I think where we're different in that first category, I heard 3. Are you saying that it was 2 for the very first registration?
I heard 2 and 2. If it's really, really busy, then we go to 3, is what.
Okay, I'll be happy to change that. So I'm looking at 2, 4, 7, 9, 10. Is that what you have?
I get 8.
Okay.
Are you using the Democratic judge
I
and the
am.
Republican
Yeah, I
judge
am. I'm
in a
counting those.
position? All right,
Yes,
you
I
got 2 on the registration,
Uh-huh.
2 on the help,
Yes.
2 in the ballot area, which is
6.
ballot and ATV. Okay, so that's 6.
Uh-huh.
1 on the DS200,
7,
your chief judge,
8, And I counted the Democrat, I shouldn't, is what you tell me?
No,
They're
they do
already counted
they
in
do
there.
one of these positions we're talking about.
Okay, in that case, I will say that if that is in fact the case, then our numbers are the same.
Okay.
Okay, we need to consider somebody having to get up and go to the lady or men's room and also going to lunch, and taking a break in this 13-hour day, I guess. So,
You know, in the past, that's worked out very well. I mean, all the teams work well together, and they realize when they're swamped, they can't jump up and go to Dick's Drive-In and get a hot dog. You know, they do work well together.
Absolutely.
And they're
Yeah.
considerate of each other and their breaks and,
at times, we may need 12, and at times, we may need 6.
That's the question.
So,
So,
um,
you know,
Can you
my only
read?
suggestion would be I would go with the higher number, maybe closer to 10 for your November elections in even years. And stick
Well-
with the lower number for all other, you know, your other elections.
What
and-
I
and
would
for
like to
municipal-
suggest would be for us to do 9 at the one stop, and then keep 12 at the general presidential, since we are hearing it is so busy. And then after this presidential, then we would have a little bit
A
more
baseline?
to look at
so now you want 12.
for the election day. 9 for the early one stop.
See, I think the opposite. I think you need less at one stop.
That's what I'm saying, 9.
I'm saying, why, I don't understand why 12 on election day, but I'm not gonna argue with it, so.
Okay, well, I'm
Just
hearing
to-
that it's a presidential election, and it's gonna be so busy
It is busy.
that they're not gonna have time to do anything. So I say if we're gonna put 12 somewhere, we do it on election day rather than one stop. Because you're gonna have so many more days at one stop.
Go, Lois.
Trying to look here. Okay,
See, the thing with this budget that I think hinders us a little bit is we don't get to see that 2016-17 to compare.
okay, should we ask the director to, which means we're not gonna be able to pass this day, which is
Fine.
no big deal, to go back and figure 9 per site on one stop and 12 per site election day. Now, this 12 per site election day, that counts the chief judge and the Democrat and Republican judge, right?
Yes.
So that would be 9 precinct workers. And could you do that, Tina,
Yes.
and also show us 2016, 17?
Yes, many of your previous reports will all have that. Your reports from last year will have it, some of the early ones, because it only goes.
16, 17 would give us a comparable
But I can-
presidential year.
Yeah, I don't figure it. These are county reports. This is a county document. These are county reports. So the one from last year, 1920, had back to 16, 17. So the report you got last year will have it. So I can just go pull what you got last year, and it'll have it already in there. I won't have to go figure it.
Okay, and I would like to make a request also. In looking at what we have here, I think this is based on what is the minimum of the number of days with no Sunday voting or additional Saturday voting. I would like to see the figures with these numbers as well, with some additional days such as a Saturday and Sunday voting included in that as well for purposes of comparison for any future discussions we might have in that particular area.
So you want me to figure for one stop,
Yes.
the way it is now, which is what you all set as the minimum,
Yeah.
which is
think
already
that's-
figured for
It
you,
don't
unless
have-
the law
Don't have
changes.
anything to do with election day.
That's already
It don't
figured,
have
so
anything to do
the,
with, it don't have anything to do with the one stop at the Board of Elections. Because we have learned that the Board of Elections one-stop site does not have to mirror the other 3 remote sites. It can be open
right,
from
and that's
8
reflected
to
on
5.
page 1.
Right,
That's what you all passed for the primary, which was the minimum.
right.
But that could change if the statute
It could.
changes.
Sure,
Okay.
but I think for what Jeff was asking, that figure's already figured, that's right here. But you're wanting me to figure it as well. Okay, so there's the potential that you could add 1 Saturday or 2, 1 Sunday or 2, 1 Saturday and 1 Sunday, 2 Sundays, 2 Saturdays, or all 4, plus different hours. So
What would you like?
what would you like for me to
I think I
figure?
would like to see something with,
We've already got one Saturday.
I think I'd like to see something with a Sunday included.
Okay. Do you have a suggestion on the hours? Do you want me to figure for half a day or partial hours or a full day?
Figure Sunday I would say figure, and I put myself on the spot, didn't I? I'm saying figure 1 to 5.
For 1 Sunday during what the law is, what this is on here, 1 Sunday?
Yes.
Okay. And what about an additional Saturday, did you say?
Yeah, I'd like to see that as well.
Same hours?
Saturday would be different. That would be, 8 to 3. I'm pulling numbers out of the air. Help me. What would you like to see, Tony?
I wouldn't like to see anything right now that you're saying, but the thing is, Jeff, how can you do that when, I mean, even if it is approved to get another Saturday and a Sunday, we don't know what the hours are. So why are you just making
I
up the
understand that. I
hours?
understand that. I think I just want to see how the numbers fall. We've had a lot of discussions about extended voting pros and cons. I'd like to see some numbers. Is that asking?
Again, this is for budget purposes. It's not to set a one-stop plan today. Please remember that.
Yeah, and I would like to see some numbers, please.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
All right. Tina, you know what we would like to see, what Jeff would like to see, what we would like to see, and then we can vote on it. Let's do away with the elections precinct staff. There's, next line item is salary benefits. There's nothing in there for that?
That's another situation, like the overtime on page 1. Doesn't need to be there, it's there, I can't get it to delete. So that's another one I'll be checking on. Nothing is supposed to be there, but I can't get that line to delete. So that's why it's printed.
The next line item is health insurance, and that's amount provided by the county, and we can't do anything about that.
What, I'm sorry, what page are we on?
We're on bottom of page 2, health insurance. We don't have any control over that. The next line item is FICA, and that's the amount provided by the county. We have no control over that.
May I?
Yes,
As I mentioned to you in the email that I sent, the last email that I sent, you'll see on that, the one-stop officials, the election day officials, and the temporary salaries don't have a figure beside of it. You can see that at the top of page 3 by your FICA. The reason for that is FICA cannot be figured by finance for those 3 things until you've set your budget of what you're going to ask. Once you have set your budget on how much you're going to ask for the one-stop officials, how much you're going to ask for the election day officials, which is actually in the same line item. It's all in election precinct staff, but they have to be separated out, which they are. Those figures, and then the third figure, the temporary salaries, whatever amount, if you choose an amount that you vote to have put in there, those numbers have to be given to finance for them to provide us with the figures. They were able to go on and tell us, board members, full-time staff, because they already know that amount.
okay.
So that's why there's no amount by those 3 categories right now in FICA.
All right, once we provide the county with the number of hours and the amount of money, then they can fill that in.
Correct.
Regular retirement, that's for the 3 people, full-time people at the office, amount provided by the county. Unemployment, amount provided by the county. Workers' comp, that's the amount provided by the county for board members and full-time staff. I'm not sure what the board members are covered under for workers' comp yet, but anyway, it's costing $17 a year for 5 board members to be covered for workers' comp for something. The next is miscellaneous professional. What is that, Tina?
That will be if you all put in for Roy at Rockingham update to video, live stream and video our meetings for the next fiscal year.
Okay, is there a discussion on that?
I think that's been a very positive thing. If you look at the number of people that have watched it, it's amazing. Don't you agree, Tina?
Absolutely, I do.
Well, enlighten me. What are some of the numbers? I don't know what they are.
I think the last time I looked, it was for our last meeting, was over 1,000. Roy could probably tell us that.
I'll be happy to email those numbers to you.
Thank you.
Thank you. My only thing is that we didn't have it in last year's budget, and the county put it in there, and they agreed to pay him for this fiscal year. Will the county pay for it again, or we need to put that in our budget?
I have no
it in
idea.
our
I didn't
budget.
go ask them to
Pay
add it
for
the
it.
first
Well,
time.
I mean, why would it be an additional $3,300 in our budget if the county's gonna pay for it like they did this year? Well,
I don't know, because we didn't budget for it last year, and some board members inquired about it, and then the county said, well, yeah, that's a good idea, we'll give you the money to do it, and they did. So if we're gonna budget for it up front, if you guys are gonna do that, we need to put the $3,300, it's $275 a meeting, and we only do it at regular meetings, so it's one time a month. And that would be the $3,300. So if you all want to continue doing that and pay for it out of our budget, you need to add that $3,300 there.
Either way, the county's paying for it.
yeah, I realize that, but it's also reflected in our budget, so. But anyway, if there's anything like 1,000 people out there watching, maybe it's taken away from our crowd here, but it may be worth it. So is there a motion for us to put this in our budget?
I'll make a motion to put this in our budget.
I'll second.
There's been a motion and a second to put the $3,300 in for our 2020-2021 budget, amount of $3,300 for live streaming. Motion and a second. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, like sign. Motion carried 5-0. Okay, utilities. Tina, talk to us about the water and lights and gas and all that stuff.
As far as the Dan River, Duke Energy, for the office lights, the gas and sewer, those amounts are, had at one time, they're provided to us by the county from the maintenance department, from the environmental and engineering department. And what they do is that they look at that because they're on a cost-saving system, a new type of a system, and they let us know if we need to increase anything, if they're notified by, say, Duke Power or Duke Energy, that something is going to be increased to an amount. They make us aware of what the estimated percentage of increase is going to be. We have not received anything, so therefore it would just, they would stay the same.
I would be voting against this amount, $7,570, because we have included in that DirecTV of $950 a year. I do not think that we should be asking the taxpayers to provide DirecTV for our employees to watch TV, so I will be voting against that.
Okay, can we make an adjustment to that line item and have a motion maybe to approve, if you want to make a motion to take that out or whatever, let's see what happens.
I make a motion that we take out the direct TV of $950 a year out of the utilities for the 2021 budget.
Second.
There's a
Unread.
motion second.
Unreadiness. I'd like to ask, for the TV, is there any way that they can have TV without direct TV? Because sometimes you have these little antennas, you can get it for free.
I guess that would be up to them.
Yeah.
If they have a TV and want to get a Fire Stick, a Hulu, or whatever it is, they
Yeah,
can.
absolutely.
They can get that. Okay, there's a motion on the floor and a second to remove the $950 direct TV expense out of the budget for next year. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, like sign. Motion carries 5-0. You don't have direct TV anymore.
So
We don't have it now, so we won't be adding it back.
So if my math is correct, that number 7,570 now becomes
Minus 950.
6,520? Help me out. I was not the best in math class. I was really good in PE, however.
Okay. Oh, that don't
some
look right.
reason,
That don't look right to me.
I can't get it to work.
6,620.
Tina, do you have a
That's at
calculator there?
6520 is what I thought it might be.
I don't.
Okay, sorry, y'all bear with me just a second.
Yeah,
$6,620?
7,570.
yeah, that's what I said.
Okay.
What is
Sorry,
it,
y'all.
Amy?
757 less 950
615.
is $6,620. You missed about 100, Jeff. 6620,
I'll personally throw
which
that
is
additional
exactly
$100.
amount for 19 and 20. So, all right, that motion is carried. Service maintenance, Tina, I'll refer to you again to talk to us about that.
Again, we talked about this some last week as well. The only change, real change was the security and fire system monitoring. Where that was different is because of the new system that the county put in our building. They replaced our old fire and security alarms, and it's a new company, and they have a new contract with them or whatnot, and so that's our new amount that they've provided us. We'll be paying, or we are paying already.
What's the Cardex record system?
That's where we house it's fireproof, that big fireproof cabinet in our main office behind Susan. That's where we keep all of our voter registration documents.
Okay, and voting equipment. Should know what that is.
DS200s and Automarks, and that's from our contracts with our vendor.
That's a maintenance contract?
It's for the service and maintenance on our voting equipment.
I mean,
Yes.
Are we purchasing those now, or are they paid for? This is a maintenance?
This is the service and maintenance amount. They're required to be maintained. Prior to every election, they have to come out and do preventive maintenance prior to every single election. That's part of the contract when we purchased. We're not purchasing them now. They're purchased. The county bought these a few years ago.
The DS200 and what else?
The Automark.
Okay. Any other questions about service and maintenance line item? Okay, moving along, the building, it says $600 for unexpected building repairs. We are in a county building, right?
Correct.
And do we have building repairs to pay for?
Sometimes, yes. I mean, a little bit sometimes, and that's what that money's for. If it's, we have to replace a doorknob or a deadbolt, we've had to replace those before. Rubber stripping at a window or the threshold of a door, those are some things we've had to replace before.
The county doesn't take care of that?
It's always been that small amount in our budget.
Do we?
But that wasn't the question. Does the county not take care of the maintenance on the building?
They take care of the large maintenance on the building when we have small things such as what I just mentioned. They've always had us to pay it out of this repair line item.
And we have paid money out of there every year?
Yes.
Okay. $600, it's not budget breaker.
And that amount of money has been sufficient to meet those needs?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that?
And that amount, $600 in this particular case, has been enough to meet those particular needs?
It has. I was just trying to think. I know there was something several years ago, but it was a larger repair, and they ended up wanting us to take it out from there, and we transferred a little money over from somewhere, but I don't recall what it was actually.
Did you have
but-
to do the air conditioner or something?
Well, we've
didn't
had to do
we?
that this year, so that comes out of there. If they have to get a part for the air conditioner or the server room, that houses, all the server with our state systems and whatnot. Anytime any of those parts or pieces go bad, if it's part of the equipment side, it comes out of equipment repair. But as far as something that's part of the building, like the heat and air system, that would usually come out of building repair.
And I'm
It can come out of equipment repair, but typically it would come out of building repair.
And I'm assuming that once that amount of money has been utilized, that there are contingency funds, other places to make sure that the building is still operational and still doing the business that needs to be done.
That's correct. I mean, they've always just had us use this amount for, like I said, doorknobs, smaller things. However, if, obviously, if we have something big, $600 ain't gonna cover it. But anything like that, we usually go through, we'll go through environmental and engineering or finance. And this is what we're looking at. This is what has to be done. Here's the amount. And sometimes they may choose to transfer the money into our account and have it come out of elections budget. They would come up with the money, they would give it to us, or they would do the same and have it come out of maintenance. And that wouldn't be our decision. That would be a decision for county.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, I have a whole list of, a page of other items that are come to us by the county, basically. And I'm gonna read over them and then give the amount. If anybody has, wants to discuss any of them, let's do so. Equipment repair, $700, same it was last year. I think Tina mentioned that. The postage, mailings, voter confirmation cards, registration cards, $12,000, which is $500 more than last year.
I'd like to see us
Okay.
cut some of that.
Okay, what can be cut out of that, Tina? It was 11.5
Just cut
last.
the amount. I mean, we never know. We don't know how much mailing we're gonna have. We don't know how many, absentees will be mailed. We don't know when we're gonna have countywide mailings, if we redistrict or move precincts or combine
But
lines.
if you look at the actuals for 2017-18 and 18-19, they're nowhere close to the 12,000 or the 11,500.
Right. The reason when we went back to the higher amount for a suggestion for this year is some of the things that have been kind of loosely talked about that may be coming up in the future are going to require a lot of countywide mailings or at least partial countywide mailings. And those types of things are costly. So we would be.
That's what I was going to say.
Right.
We've talked about
So
a
that's
couple of
why
things.
we went
that
back
would-
to on years that we have used that amount, which actually was cut years ago to the 12,000. But that's why it was put to the higher amount, because some of the things we're looking at moving forward, we're also looking at redistricting outside of our, being done. Those things can require mailings to either certain precincts, certain districts, or countywide.
So things like no voter ID required or voter ID required, is that stuff sent from our office or the state?
It's the ones, it depends. Sometimes we have to do it. They have made us do things where we had to send new voter cards with that on there, or another type of a mailing we've had to do. The ones that they did in this campaign, but they got stopped. They had just done one. I think I think it was going to be a 5 mailing. I'm not sure. It was being done by the state, but they were doing them statewide. So we didn't have to do those. So it depends on what we're directed to do. Really no way to gauge if that'll happen or not. And as far as, your regular mailings, your regular cards, absentees, how many will we have to mail, how many have to be remailed, how much daily mail, all you can do is look at what might be coming that could cause extra, or what you have spent in the past as far as your daily mailings, because there's just no way to know what large mailings may occur.
Okay, I think Bonnie had questioned whether or not you could reduce that $12,000 request. Is that possible, you think, or?
You can put it any amount you want to. I mean, if we have a required mailing that we don't know, it's going to have to be done, whether we have the budget for it or not. So
is there a number that
certainly
you
it could be
suggest?
cut, yes.
Is there a number that you would suggest in lieu of 12,000 for that particular area?
Not knowing, I mean, maybe you could look at the comparable year, 18-19, it was up close to 8,000.
I was thinking more of 10,000, cutting it by 2,000.
And then, again, if we
And I was
have any of
thinking
those
11,000.
countywide. So, honestly, I don't have a suggestion other than I wouldn't go below the last comparable year, which was 18-19. And again, that's not knowing what we may or may not have to do
All right.
these large mail-ins for.
Let's call a question. Is there a motion to set an amount for postage for 2021?
I make a motion that we set the amount at $10,000.
There's a motion. Is there a second? No second. Is there another motion?
I make the motion that we set the amount at $11,000.
There's a motion to set $11,000. Is there a second?
I second.
There's a motion second to set the postage amount for next year at $11,000. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, like sign?
Aye.
Okay, motion carried 3-2. To set the postage amount at $11,000. Printing $40,000. That's a $26,000. That is for ballots for one election. Provisionals for one election. Absentees for one election. Any questions, comments?
I don't think we have much choice about that.
Well, it's $8,000 less than it was last year, so. Of course, we had 2 elections last year. All right, moving on, general insurance, amount provided by the county. Communications, you'll note that the cell phone for the director was moved out of her lump sum of salary and benefits out to communications at the direction of the assistant county manager, I believe, of $650. So that's the office phones, long distance, and director's cell phone, $1,650. Advertising, $2,400. Line item dues for full-time staff, $60 a year for their membership in their association dues. That's $30 for director and $15 for the senior deputy and the deputy director, $15 each. Travel, $500. Travel in county, we had $500 last year. Okay, board training. And she has on here 3 conferences. I'll tell you there's a possibility that there may be only 2 conferences next year. That board training, board chair, secretary, and 3 members, $1,815 each. That is that per conference?
18-15? Yes.
Wow. Okay.
Oh, no, that's the total
Yeah, I was thinking, I didn't use up
per
1,850
board member,
for board members.
per
yeah.
board member for the year.
So it could.
Plus mileage.
That
You gotta add
number
mileage.
will probably be reduced to $1,200 each.
I did check, as I believe, I sent y'all an email, and I put in a help ticket with the state, and we've talked to several other counties. No one's really sure. The reason I wanted to check on this was because, as you recall, the last 2 years, our December conference was canceled. So kind of looking forward, you kind of think maybe they're going to get rid of that December conference. So that's what we're trying to get an answer to, because if we could cut that out, if there's not going to be a December conference any longer, between board training and staff training, that's a good little bit of money right there that we wouldn't have to budget for.
Right.
But I still don't have an answer. I don't think we're going to have a December conference. I think it's only going to be 2 conferences a year from now on, but I have not yet gotten that confirmation from the state board, which is why I have not sent you anything about that confirmation.
Well, we don't know whether to leave it in there or not, I guess. I mean, we're not going to pass this today, apparently. And we may have more information next
Yeah, I will
week.
send that to you like I do everything else. As soon as I get that answer, I'll send it to you. I don't have an answer.
I mean, that's a few $100s.
But I think, and talking with some other directors too, they seem to think the same thing. We're only going to have the 2 conferences a year
Typically,
instead of 3. But
as
I
we're-
do not have that confirmation.
Probably next year we'll have one, and we've got one scheduled in August of this year, and probably February next year.
Spring and
or
fall
something.
is what I
Yeah.
think is going to be from now on, and no
The same
December
thing for the staff
conference.
training, the director, senior deputy, the deputy director, and you got in your IT technician, you gonna still plug that in? Sometime he goes, sometime he
Well,
don't?
I've asked, we were budgeted for him to go this year, in this budget year. But this last conference, it was denied. He didn't get to go. We had the funds, but you have to get pre-approval, and he was denied. And the conference before that, he was denied to go the first night and the first day because of what was on the agenda, that everything may not apply to him or whatnot. So
Okay,
But I think that's the way they set the amount. The commissioners, from what I understood, was they would look, or Lance or someone with the county would look at the agenda to see if it would benefit for the IT person to be able to go.
Right, and that's the new policy. But the budget money was put in what we asked for last year, because we didn't know how many days or how many hours. So the money was there. They left the money there, so I don't know, if you just want to cut that out and him not be eligible to go.
I think
Or
Derek
leave it and-
actually
and
looks
ask.
at it to see, the IT director, does he not?
I didn't hear what you said.
Doesn't Derek look at it to see if there's something on the agenda that he wants one of his staff members to go to?
He does, but sometimes Derek's suggestion, it does not have to be taken. So I think that's a county decision, but he certainly does recommend, and they do get the agenda so that he can look at
okay,
that.
let's move along. This will be open till we either find out more information next week about 2 conferences, and whether IT would go at all, and then we could approve that. General supplies, $16,000. Supplies for the operation of the office projects, events, copy of charges. Okay, that's pretty much it.
Just
Yeah.
cut it back from the previous request we had been requesting, not actuals listed here, but requests were 18,000, but if you look at the last comparable year, we just spent slightly over 16,000 in that year, and then 15,000. So it's being a presidential, you don't want to go too much, but I did cut from previous requests from 18 to 16. And then on precinct supplies, right under it, same thing. If you look back at 18, 19, it was a little over 11,500. So we just put it at the 11,000 instead of what I think it was the 12,000. So.
Okay, all right. We still have some work to do. I think we voted on a couple of things today, but other than that, we're going to have to revisit the budget next week, Tina.
I'll have it on the agenda.
And we'll vote on a budget request at that time. Is there anything else any board member has to bring up about the budget now? Okay. Director or Amy, who wants to talk to us about the 2020 primary election updates? Tina, I guess. We've already talked about a lot of it, I guess.
We have, and we covered most of it. Just quickly, we have already discussed the fact that One Stop is going slow, and we're, as always, revisiting the schedule to not even bring as many people in. But even with that, we're still sending people home early, depending on the need. But it's going well, even though the turnout's low. Absentee by mail, you all are getting ready to have your absentee meeting. It's still very slow, so you'll get that information and those reports from Amy at your absentee meeting here in a little while. And Election Day, we're still working on it. We will have to put on the agenda for you all. We know of one appointment you're going to have to make for a judge, and there may be others that you all have to make, so you'll have to be prepared to do that at the next meeting. Other than that, we're working on, getting everyone's staff. We're very shorthanded. We've discussed that in many places. So we're looking at that. And
I think this is a good time for us to make a pitch to the community that we need precinct officials.
Yes.
From all parties. So please, if you would like to work for the Board of Elections, contact the Board of Elections.
I
we
might
have
add that,
applications on our website too,
last
the county's
summer,
website on our
when
page.
We appoint judges every 2 years. And last summer, we had a potential list. This is people that have signed up to work, of 2.5 pages of potentials. Last week, we had a half page of potential precinct workers. It may be that in the future, sometime, we have to consider consolidating precincts because we don't have enough workers to work. So we need people to sign up and get trained and work at the precincts. One thing about the elections now, the primary, if we're cutting back to 4, 5, 6, 7 people working, and we requested money for 12, there's going to be some money saved. And,
Yes.
and the money will be in the budget for this year, and when you turn the hours in, there'll be a lot of money saved that won't be used, right?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Is there anything else on that, Tina? We'll go to item number 9, unfinished business. Anybody have any unfinished business at this time?
I have one item, Mr. Chair. I've spoke with Leanna, and I know that we have added to our agendas an invocation, and if the board would see fit, Leanna and I have agreed to find us different individuals from the community to do that invocation for us at our meetings, if that would be the pleasure of the board.
I would certainly welcome that. I tried, since our last meeting, I talked to several people and several ministers, and I couldn't get anybody for today. And I'm glad that Mabel was here and gave that wonderful invocation. And so if Leanna or you or anybody else, I think we've been advised by the attorney that we shouldn't do this. Is that right, John? The board members should not get up and pray.
Well, Mr. Chair, I think it's more appropriate to have members of the faith community to offer prayers, yes.
Okay. That's fine. Is there any more discussion on that? I don't think we need to approve that. Is that okay with everybody? It's fine, okay. All right, that's unfinished business. Do we have any new business to come before the board at this time? Hearing none, I will entertain a motion to adjourn and remove ourselves to the Board of Elections for the purpose of our next absentee meeting.
I make a motion.
There's a motion to adjourn, second.
I second.
Motion second, all in favor say aye. Aye. Motion carried. Thank you all for being here.
Yes, sir.